Welcome, everybody, to the Building Resilient podcast. This is a podcast where we go beyond the surface to uncover the powerful stories, strategies, and insights that help you to grow through adversity and lead with purpose. I'm your host, Jose Pereira. I'm an author, I'm an international speaker, and I'm a leadership and resilience coach. And every week I bring you bold survivors and change makers who have turned their pain into a powerful and their trials into triumphs. I have today a very, very special guest with me. Her name is Deissy Rosenbaum. Every chapter, I tell how I get connected with the person that I am interviewing, because this series is called Meet the Expert. So I'm interviewing persons that are expert in their line of services or whatever they do. But the way I got connected with all of them are that they have been part of my journey. Most of them has been people that have podcasts, that have been interviewing me. So I told them to get interviewed now. And some of them are like Deissy. Deissy, for me, is something very special because she's my therapist. So talking here about how I got connected, and we're going to talk a little bit about her advocacy, and how we got connected, because today she's part of the therapist group of the Hosted US Foundation. The people that doesn't know, Hosted US is a wonderful foundation that takes care of the former hostages like me. When they come back to the US, they take care of their physical, their mental, and even they help in some fashion in the financial way. But in the mental health, that is one of the biggest issues. You know, the PTSD events and rebuilding your life back. Here's where Deissy comes, because she's an expert in trauma recovery. So without further ado, I'm going to give the mic to her, and she can talk about her. Welcome, Deissy, to the show.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you for all the introduction. I'm very happy to be here. Yes, I've been with Hostage US for about 3 years, I believe. And they found me. They are an incredible organization, and Amy, who is an incredible, she just, I don't know, search the web, find my profile. There are very few people that speak Spanish that works with trauma. And I think that's why I became the lucky one to be found by them. And I've been just very happy to be able to work with different families, different people who've been released since then. And we only starting. The organization is really looking forward to amplify the services, learn more, do some research. There's very little literature about this phenomenon, or what hostage go through, or their families. And so that's one of the exciting things. There is some research starting to happen in some part of our team, and we are looking forward into creating more literature for other therapists, for other people who want to kind of work in this kind of line, to be trained to learn, to want to be involved. This is pure volunteering work, is because it's our passion. We want to help people. We all have our private practices or work in other capacities in the field. And this is just how we give back, just to helping guide people. And at this point, we're more of a support system, wellness program, just to help whomever comes back, or the families that are struggling, just to give them some place to vent, to maybe find some a way to cope, just understand a little bit of where their family members may be reacting or acting in certain ways, because trauma hits everybody very differently. So we just a space for people to be able to release those things, and we help them put into perspective or find strategies to help themselves or their family members. It's very rewarding. I love working with trauma survivors in general.
Okay, so let's go a little bit back because you were born in Colombia. You began your career in Colombia. Talk a little bit how Deissy became a trauma expert. How was your early beginnings?
Yes, I was born and raised in Colombia and even did my undergrad in psychology in Colombia. Never in my wildest dreams I thought I was going to end up in America, but I met my husband, we fell in love, and he imported me to America. I was in the process of saving money to go to Spain to do some master degree in clinical psychology. I always have loved clinical psychology, and unfortunately, in our countries, it's very hard to live financially doing clinical psychology. Still, a lot of taboos about going to the psychologist. Besides Argentina, that in South America,
I was going to say that the
yes,
Argentinas are incredible. Everybody has a therapist.
It's fantastic. They really understand the importance of mental health. They've done a lot of fantastic therapies have come out of Argentina. But in other countries, unfortunately, that's not yet where we are.
Well, in Venezuela, when you say that you're going to the therapist, they immediately see that you're crazy.
Yeah.
That people see you like, oh, this guy has some problem.
Yes.
So nobody talks about that.
No. And if someone goes to therapy, it's kind of hidden. They don't tell anybody. So it's very hard in our countries to live as a clinical psychologist unless you are associated with a hospital or some kind of those very acute, very difficult cases. But clinical psychology was my passion, so I knew that I had to go and do some master somewhere else. I was saving to go to Spain because the language. And then my husband found me in the way. He owns me still a trip to Barcelona. But life brought me here, so I was able to do the masters here. In marriage and family therapy was just how I became a therapist in the States. And from then on, just been doing a lot of training in different areas. I have worked with at the beginning of my career, there was a lot of multicultural couples because usually, one came from the Latin world and the spouse came from the, American world, and they couldn't understand each other because of the cultural differences. Mm-hmm. That's where I started to work a lot with children of immigrants as well. And eventually, I don't remember how I ended up into trauma, but I ended up doing some trainings and getting some clients. What I found is most people, even in couples work, they have some traumatized experiences that they haven't been able to sort out, or they weren't usually when they're children or teenagers, and we don't have the mental and the brain capacity to process that, right? Yeah. But then it comes out in different ways when you're married or when you're a parent. These things start to come out in your emotions, in your behaviors, in your relationships. So I started to be curious about it. Like, okay, how is it that some people cannot move past certain experiences? And so I started doing some training. I went through an experience myself. I had postpartum depression after my second child, and it was very traumatizing for me. So I did my own therapy, and through that process, I learned, oh my gosh, I didn't know that I had childhood things that I didn't sort out, that I didn't even know they were still in my brain, or they were traumatizing to me, but they were coming out in the way that I was feeling, in the fears I have as a mother, in the relationship I was having with my husband. So doing my own internal work, I realized, you know what? We all have things that we just haven't resolved. And I want to learn to do this to help people. So then we really can heal. I feel that our body and our brain has the tremendous capacity of healing if we know how to activate those healing capacities. So I just became very curious to learn these. And I started experimenting because I was doing some training, formal training in parts and memory therapy at that point. With this type of therapy, like, okay, let's go into deeper, activate memories of emotion, of situations that were never resolved before. I was doing my own work and doing this healing. I'm like, oh my gosh, this feels incredible. And I start doing the same with my clients, and my clients will say, like, what is this? It's magic. How is it that I came here with this anxiety or with this whatever emotion, and I'm like, it's disappear. And so I used to tell them, or I answer, it's the magic of science. Now we understand the brain more. We understand how to activate those healing powers, how to help our brain release what it doesn't need. And so I came into therapy with trauma really by pure curiosity, and as a consequence of my own work with my own, that I never growing up thought that I had a traumatizing childhood, or that I have a difficult life. I was loved, cared for. There were things that happened, of course, like in every family. My parents got divorced in the time where I was a teenager. That is traumatizing for any child in any time. But I thought all of these things, I have already overcome them. I'm adult. I shouldn't be hurt by these things. But no, doing my own work, I realized, oh my gosh, there is so much in my brain that got stuck in that experience in that time. And I was very fortunate to have a therapist to help me through that process. And it became very different. I didn't struggle with postpartum for my third child, and in general, I felt like I was relief of some sort of weight. And so I became very passionate to help people. And that's when I started to discover, okay, trauma can be healed. And a lot of people don't know that, and go through life with so many anchors or so many weights, emotionally, mentally, that don't allow them to have a fulfilling life. And like, oh my gosh, I want to tell everyone that, trauma is healable. So that's why I start to do trauma. And then I think God, life, whatever it is, just start to put me into the direction of a lot of people that were going through much more difficult, traumatizing situations than just my regular clients would.
Like me.
Like you, absolutely. And experiences that test the resiliency and the capacity of humans. And that is for me incredibly I'm just so curious to understand every person, every story. What are their resources? How they overcome it? What did they do? What is it that they still need to heal? So
Yesterday I interviewed a friend that she has a podcast. Her name is Lydia Lowry Bustler. She's an incredible story because because one of the things that I'm really enjoying now, the people that are connected with me, that I know them like maybe 1 or 2 years, but I have never known in that deep their story. And long story short, she was a professional music player. She was a trombonist in all the major, the Boston Opera, the New York Ballet. She was a very, very big musician. And one day she stopped, and she had a car accident, and she almost lost her leg. And there was gonna take her, they amputate the leg, and she said no, and she began to go through her own healing process using breathing meditations and then music, and she discovered that she could heal, and now she's doing that, healing through the music and the meditation and the breathing. And it happened because of her accident. But the point is that she could recover her leg. She could heal because everything is here, is in the mind. It's incredible how the mind works.
Yeah, no, our brain and our body. Some people don't understand that the trauma or emotions don't live in our brain. They live in our body. Correct. They live and so I love what you're saying. There is actually a lot of research now in frequencies of music to heal different emotional stages like depression, anxiety, that are even more effective than medication, because our body is synchronicity. Our body has rhythm. Our body it's naturally, without bothering it, our body tends or tries to get into a homeostasis. Our brain too.
We're vibrations.
Yes.
We're vibration. We burn, we bright.
Correct. We have vibration, we have electricity, we have rhythm, our heart, everything works in a synchronicity. And so that it is incredible to see how the capacities of human healing. So if you ask me why trauma, is because it's one of the things that I can see the most healing happening. Trauma is just that little rock or obstacle in that process of healing, that if we help the brain and we teach the person how to remove it, then everything starts to fall into place. So it's so rewarding to see people coming from a place of being stuck into a place of like almost blossoming, almost like everything opens, everything is capable, their relationships improve, they find that happiness, that balance. Is such rewarding process to see someone going through that. Just as in my own personal experience, I went through that, and it's like, I can't believe someone will choose to be in the stuck place and the pain place. And of course, people don't choose that. It's just they don't have the resources, or they're afraid of going and seek help for it.
You know, I was talking 2 days ago with, you know, that when I was in my hostage situation, I was with political prisoners of Venezuela. And 2 days ago, I was talking with a friend that he was with me. He was a political prisoner. He was released. And he called me for another reason, but we were talking. He was still living in Venezuela. He's still living because he cannot go out of the country because he's in jail in the country. So the point is that he told me that he was going someplace to take gasoline in the car, something like that, and he saw one of the cars of the Deissy, you know, the counterintelligence police, and he told me that he got a panic attack when he saw it. So he had a PTSD event, but the point is that he doesn't have nobody to support him. So he's going through his event. When he told me that, I recognized that it was a PTSD event because you have been healing. But I had the blessing that to the audience that I have Deissy with me every week. Every week, I can say it here very proudly. Every week since almost 3 years, she has been with me, but I had a blessing that I can handle my episode. So when he told me that, to tell you the truth, it broke my heart. Saying how much people are going through trauma in their life and they don't have nobody to support them because they don't know how to handle. So they get stuck there all their life. So, Deissy, tell me about, because you're talking about how you decided to do that trauma. But before here in the US, I know that you did also trauma work in other countries. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I traveled different countries. I wasn't I didn't have the same capacity to work as a therapist. Of course, in Colombia, I was privileged to work with indigenous tribes. When I was working in El Cerrejón, La Guajira, as a not directly with them, but as a provider for them, and I was in the security company, and we have situations in which they were suicides, or they were kills, accidental or by guerrillas, and so I was kind of in the team of response to support the family, to help a little bit with the process of grieving in some sense. So that's kind of, it wasn't necessarily the focus of my work, but I had to do it as part of my work. So yeah, that was kind of my first experience in that area. Then eventually we were here in the States for 10 years, and we moved to Korea for my husband's job. And I was there more in the capacity of a spouse and mother. I took a vacation in some sense. But the last year I was able to work with some students, more in preparation for their transitions to coming to the States and studying. And so it was not as in depth, but nevertheless was a great experience to get to know a beautiful culture, Korea, Asia in general. And so when I came back, and then we moved to Texas, is when that work was more, it started to kind of show the path. When we were here before Korea, I was living in Las Vegas. So Las Vegas is a very interesting town. There is a lot of things that happen, a lot of transient people that come to work or they leave. So I had some clients that were through a lot of traumas, a lot of immigrants, I worked with our community there, because that didn't have insurance, they were illegal, that were coming from Mexico from difficult situations. At that point in Mexico, the whole cartels started to happen. So a lot of people were experiencing the little bit of the fear or problems. Coming from Colombia, I knew that very well. I grew up in the 90s when all of the impact of the drug cartels in the society were so, prevalent. So I was able to work with a lot of people, kind of in that beginning process where Mexico was becoming the new drug cartel capital. Mm-hmm. That was some interesting work, and all of them were illegal immigrants that they didn't have any insurance. So I was very, very comfortable fee, and they were very comfortable that nobody from any kind of clinic or any kind of insurance will have their information, and we are kind of in the similar situation now where people are not seeking help because of the fear of being, even through their own insurance or whatever, because what situations that are happening in immigration. So it's those, immigration in itself is a traumatic event. Nobody leaves their country unless it is to your decision, or you want, even when you decide to go for studying, for work, it's a tremendous change. You cut your roots where you grew up, your food, your family, the dynamics, the society, the routines in itself is a traumatic event many times. Especially if you have to navigate this alone or adjust to an environment with very few people. It is, especially in Latino cultures, we are so connected to our family and to our friends and the support we have. And here we have to do it a lot of the times alone. So in itself is a very traumatizing situation that sometimes people minimize it. But
that I'm trying to begin the foundation exactly about that, because you said something very key, that you navigate things as an immigrant alone. And you don't have guidance, and sometimes you make mistakes because of that. So Deissy knows that I try to set up a foundation exactly to help in that area. Immigrants, how to help them to navigate that. So we're in the early start, but I believe that it's a very, very, very needed that type of support. So now Deissy, that talks a little, because you do a lot of advocacy, it's part of yourself. So how you got connected to Hosted US? Tell me about that experience.
So there was a case from someone who was from Nevada, which was my original license, where I was living in Las Vegas. And so they needed someone that spoke Spanish, because he was a person of Latino heritage. He didn't want anybody in English. He distrusts people that spoke English or native English speakers. And so he wanted someone that spoke Spanish. He was coming out of Venezuela, and he was very, very much physically and emotionally tortured. So they needed someone that can help him through that. That was my first experience. And we work, I think 6 months, I worked with this person. No idea what the situation was. That was my first encounter to understand the horrors or the circumstances that people go through there. He just went for tourism and ended up, of course, implicated just because he has an American passport into some other things. So he was fortunate to come out and in a group that they were freeing people, and that's where we just met, work. He readjust. He was able to regain again work and things like that, and that was kind of the first process I did. And from then, you were my second one. That was a little bit of time afterwards that they say, hey, now in Texas, and you're licensed in Texas too, we have this person you want to talk. I'm like, sure. I was so curious and interested about, after my first experience with this other person, that I knew a little bit more about it. I'm like, absolutely, I'm ready to help. And from then on has been more and more families and active cases right now too, that I support families trying to figure out and navigate where to be in the situation, because it's a lot of emotions.
You know, the audience that are hearing Deissy, maybe are not familiar that the Hotel US, as I mentioned in the beginning, is not the only one. There are several foundations, but they specifically, they focus in helping the families and the former hostages when they return, how to regain their balance in their life from the physical, from the mental, emotional, and even from the financial. They give some guidance to. I was one of the cases since day one working with them. But one of the things that really is important to say here is that when you come back, the people think that it's the ending of a love story, and it's the beginning of a new path. Because I always say this, but I will not stop saying this. You come like coming in a time machine, in a world that you don't recognize, and you find your life totally screwed up. I remember that case that you mentioned, Daisy, because I met that person in Washington when he came, and he was the speaker. I remember that in that event he was the speaker, and when because even he was in Venezuela, we were in different places, so I never met. So I came to him, I introduced him and said, "Hey, my friend, very good." He was speaking about his experience, and I remember that he told me that he found his life so screwed up that he didn't know if it was being worth coming back or staying there. And that really impacted me because I was going through exactly the same situation. And and this year, because the audience that are hearing this, we do today, there is like a institutionalized that every year there is something that is called the Hostage Awareness Week, where all the foundations that work in that area, they meet. So this year we went, and Deissy went also to that event, and the speaker of that event was a former hostage that came from Iran. For me, it was a kind of a funny situation because we our faces was in an alley in Georgetown as a representation of the people that are being hostage, and my face was beside the face of that person. So I came to him. I didn't know him in person, and I introduced myself. And of course, he recognized me because he knew that my face was beside his face. And the first thing that as I did with the guy that came from Venezuela 3 years ago, he was the speaker, and I came introduce myself and say, "Hey, wonderful speech." And his answer was exactly the same. He was having issues regaining back his life. He has already like 7 months he came back, and he's still struggling to get his life back. So let's talk a little bit about that. What is your experience in that? Because I know that you now have several families. It's coming like a pattern. Talk a little bit about that.
I think the first year is almost like you're still in zombie land. Like you're trying to cope with the simplest things, simple decisions. Because when people are held hostage, you lose the capacity to make decisions. You lose the capacity to agency into whatever you want to do. When you communicate, you can't speak about your needs. You can speak about your feelings. Like you have to almost create a very hermetic, get hiding underneath a bunch of things. So regaining that capacity of communicating, even identifying what do I need in this moment, and or how do I communicate. And as you say, everything has changed, and so it's almost like I'll describe it as a daze type of situation. Most people come and they're overwhelmed. It's so much. They're overwhelmed with now having the freedom to make decisions but don't know how to make them, or having the freedom to communicate but not knowing anymore how to communicate, and being afraid of communicating because the brain has learned you have to hide, you have to protect yourself.
Correct.
So then the same is even with the loved ones. You don't feel comfortable, even though you know you're safe in your mind. Your body's telling you, no, you're not safe, don't open, don't say, don't do. So it's still like a protective type of response. Everything has changed because the dynamics have changed. Family members have have to assume different roles, have to assume decision making. And so it's coming back to a completely different world, even within the family, because everything had to change. Everybody was impacted in different ways. Finding again a routine, finding a meaning of why did I go through this, and what's the meaning of life now, and how am I going to go in my life from there now on. Going back, sometimes people most likely try to kind of reset to what happened before, but they find it very difficult because their life is not the same. And so that's what they struggle with. Like, okay, I want to almost like erase the situation and let's go back to how everything it was before, but that's not possible. So it is the first year I've seen is the hardest, and people, neither family or the release person, understand why is it so hard. Why is it that I'm with my family, but at the same time we're not connecting, we're not getting along, we're having more, not necessarily only arguments, it's just like we don't feel the same ability to soothe, to help each other. And it is about time. All that I can say it is, when humans go through a very traumatized situation for an extended period of time, right? And even a little bit what you're saying about the car accident, when it's very traumatizing, it takes time for your brain and your body to cope with it and be able to make sense of it and be able to find your new self and be able to find a new direction. And so I think the first year is the hardest. Families also, they work so hard to have their loved one back, and then there is back and is this different person. They don't know how to approach, how to communicate, what to do. They just want to hug them, love them, kiss them, but at the same time, the person is more still in a guarding, because they are overwhelmed. This is something they were deprived of, and it's not a switch. The brain is not a switch we can change. It takes time. It's more of a muscle. We exercise and repeat some things, and then our bodies and our brains get used to it. So that's what I see most of the time. That first year is where more support is needed, because it's so many changes, so many frustrations, so many fears, so many change roles, that people need to get adjust to it. Usually, if they do some work, if they have some support, some assistance, if they are open to understand what's happening and why is this happening, then they can move a little bit farther in that direction. And passing about year and a half, depending of the family, depending of the person, things start to feel more normal, or at least the new normal. They start to feel a little bit more grounded. Okay, now I feel like I have a place, I have a space, we have a routine. Now I can start moving forward into more founding those new directions in life. But it takes time, about a year and a half. What I also witness is some people that are not working actively through their trauma, because they're still kind of holding that protection mode, take longer.
And sometimes people think that it's not affecting them.
Yes.
They believe they're not affecting, and it's affecting you, but you don't know it.
Yes, but their family notice, or their loved one notice, like, yeah, no, you're reacting differently. You're not used to, you weren't doing these kind of things, or and sometimes take specific events when the person loses control or the emotions are too overwhelming to realize, like, you know what? Yes, there is something there that I need to sort out. And it doesn't, the brain is such an incredible, I mean, our brain is made to protect us. So sometimes a lot of things that our brain hide from us in our subconscious brain to protect us from it, because he kind of gives us all the pain at once. He kind of the brain has to release it in a little portion. And so people don't understand, even if you work through this trauma situation, sometimes their things are still there and they might come up later. But when they come up, it's because the brain is saying, okay, we are in a safe enough environment now that we can deal with this and we can work through these. And so then it's up to the person to say, okay, yeah, I want to sort this out. I want to heal this part that is not yet healed. And then continue to the work. But I think with situations, especially if it's a very, very impactful situation, or it's an extended period of time, which is what we call complex trauma, it requires a lot of patience and a lot of time to peel the onions little by little of all those experiences and all those emotions. It's not a switch. And I think a lot of people want to come back to their lives in that perception, like, okay, I'm going to turn on the switch of my previous life and then forget about this experience and everything is going to be okay. And that's not how our bodies and our
Yeah,
brains work.
that happened to me at the beginning. You know that I tried to go back like a wild horse to do things, and one day my brain said, "Stop,
Mm-hmm.
stop." So, you know, you mentioned about the retraining of the brain, and I have it's fascinating talking about the neuroplasticity of the brain. I
Yep.
have a friend in Mexico that she's an expert in that, and every time
Yeah.
I talk with her, it's fascinating because she said that it's like a plastiline that you can. That
Mm-hmm.
is a very personal decision to take the decision to do it.
Yeah.
That you know, for me today, the combination between the science and the faith is incredible
Yep.
because I was talking with my pastor and he has been very let's say persistent with all the persons in the church that when they pray with intention
Mm-hmm.
and pray with the things that they really believe and they really want to happen that think that as they have already happened and really I was the other day hearing somebody talking about that when you begin to do that intentionally your brain begins to kind of be retrained and now your belief become your reality so that's where you really materialize things. Tell me a little
Mm-hmm.
bit what you think about that.
I think spirituality, whatever the practice of spirituality that anybody does, is tremendously important because um, the sense of not feeling alone, the sense of feeling some kind of protection from a God or the universe, whatever people believe, right? It helps us feel safe enough to open up, to take risks about ourselves, to release pain, to I mean, and this has been in the literature of psychology forever. We humans are body, mind, and spirit, right? We are,
Mhm.
all of these spheres are what makes us be human and complement us. Or we cannot just focus on the body and not focus on the brain, right? We cannot just focus on the brain and be all intellectual and not pay attention to our body, because then our body will protest. And we cannot just focus on our body, brain, mind, and without attending to the soul, to the spirit, right? So I think when people are healing, the power of understanding or feeling not alone, feeling cared for, loved,
Mhm.
protected, guided by a God, by whatever the beliefs are, helps tremendously the sense of safety and therefore the sense of I am capable of, I could do this, I have protection. And so it does contribute to through the healing, and it gives us that conviction, that belief that I think that the most detrimental thing for any human being is isolation and loneliness.
Oh yeah.
And that's one of the things that probably in the hostage experience is they utilize it as a way of punishment, because no human can be isolated and alone for too long, because then we will not survive.
Well, in my case, as you know, I stayed the first year alone, but we had the blessing that because of all the pressure that happened, that the six, because the audience that doesn't know, we were six, we were put together. And I
Yeah.
always mention that because for me, that was key, that
Yep.
we could stay the six together because when you are not alone, it becomes your support, you know, and when you do it intentionally, because we did it intentionally. I have talked with the others after our release several times, and we always get to the same conclusion that one of the things that really helped us to survive is that we decided to help each other. We created that
Mm-hmm.
bond, and we had
Yep.
something also that for me, that I'm a God believer, that was something miraculous because we were six guys that all of us had almost 30 plus years marriage. So it was incredible that we six guys that we were not friends, we were chosen randomly, were put it together, and the six had 30 plus year marriage. So we had
Yeah.
really things to talk. We had
Yeah.
a lot of things in common. But when you come back, getting to the spirituality is key, but also having the support of your family.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the families, because this
Yes.
is something that is very important.
Well, families, it's almost like they also enter their own time machine because they have to stop everything, or most of them have to stop a lot of the direction their lives are going or what they were focusing on, to focus on, first of all, going through the shock of understanding what happened, what do you mean. Most of the time, of course, it's people that really have not committed any kind of crime, but they get involved because we know it's more political reasons. Trying to make sense of it, what happened, understanding, finding out that their loved one is okay. So it's a period of shock for the first, probably, I don't know, six months, sometimes a year. What in the urgency, we need to do something, we need to do something. Sometimes they get taken advantage of by people, say, yeah, of course we help you, or whatever, lawyers, who knows. And in that first moment of urgency or fear, people might make decisions just because they want to get their loved ones home. But then as the process takes longer, it's just they start to work on the acceptance. This is not going to happen quickly, this is going to take time, and try to organize their lives in a way that they can in some way continue living, because they have to support financially, or because they have children, or
But
whatever it is.
there is a piece of the guilt, that because I remember my family
Yes.
telling me that they didn't want to go to no party, no
Yes.
birthday, no
Yes.
movie, no nothing, because they feel guilt doing that,
Yes.
knowing that you were there. So it
Yes.
became a real burden for the family.
Yeah, the life that they continue living is more out of necessity. Like, I have to work, I have to provide, but they're not, they lost a lot of the enjoyment because, yeah, they feel guilt, like I cannot have fun or be happy while my loved one is not, is in that place like that. And not only that, even if they're focusing working or something, it's like this huge thing in their brain 24/7 operating. What else can I do? How is he doing? They cannot turn that off. So they enter their own way of frozen in time, because they're just staying in that state, thinking and thinking and thinking and figuring it out, and if they can reach, advocate, whatever they can do, but also feeling a sense of hopelessness, because as much as they are doing, they're not achieving the goal of bringing their loved ones home. So it is very frustrating, and it's very tiring, because it's a long process, right? That they don't anticipate it when this started to happen, that it was going to take so long. And then the roles have to change, who's going to do what is going to be in charge of what. And there are some family members that can cope with it and disconnect, and so the other ones might feel frustrated. What you mean, you abandon us in the middle of the hardest time of our life? But it is a way of coping, disconnecting, because it's so overwhelming, they don't know how to respond. So there are so many ways that people respond to these, and it completely shake the foundation, or the dynamic of how the family was
It's like
functioning
a
before.
bomb in the middle of the
Yes.
family, boom,
Yes.
everything explodes.
Yes.
It's so complex, and the audience that's hearing this, that really, for me, is fascinating, because I went through that, and my family went through that. And even when I was in Washington, talking with several people, I felt the same feeling, the same pattern. So that's why I decided that I'm going to write my next book. I'm going to talk about how's the life after return.
Yeah.
Because again, the people doesn't understand how difficult is, because not only regaining your life back, is simple things like a credit card that is blown up in the interest, or taking a driver license and renewing it. Things simple begin to be so complex, or finding a job, because that's the other thing. When you put your CV, and they see, hey, what you did this 10 years? No, I was a hostage in China. Oh, the people get scared. They don't hire you. That's what happened with this guy that I met in Washington. He has like a 2 PhD. He's a genius. And he could not find a job, because the people get like, oh, this was a hostage. It's from Iran.
Yeah.
So the people, so it became to be a real burden. So let's talk a little bit, Deissy, because I always make this question to the person that I interviewed. What is the case that you remember that really broke your heart? Always there a case that you know that you treated that broke your heart, that you feel that, oh, wow, was overwhelmed.
Oh my gosh, let me think. So it's several different ones through my
No,
career.
but always is one that pop ups in the mind.
I think probably one of my earlier ones, just because I was so new and I didn't know how to handle it, and I had to do a lot of research and help. And it was a young adult that went through a lot of sexual abuse. I think that's where I started to find the curiosity about human trauma. She was in her 20s, and very much her life was not functional. Very much high suicidality all the time. I mean, she told me later on that if she wouldn't have started working with me, she wouldn't have made it past the next 6 months. She was already committed to end her life. But I saw incredible potential, very smart, and she was just so lost. And she just went over. She was sexually abused through her childhood by different family members. And so I became very passionate of I'm going to help her make it. And to the point that I will even take her to some of my mentor therapists. Like, I want you to do therapy. I'll pay you for the session. I want to see what you do with this. and she was up, and she saw that I from my heart wanted to help her so much, even if I didn't have the tools. And so seeing my mentors did their work and how they approach is like, oh my gosh, I want to be like them. I want to grow into that capacity that I can help people. So she inspired me a lot and she stick with me. And we worked together for 3-4 years until I leave Las Vegas, but she survived and she made it.
You have done some follow-up on her?
No, I couldn't. We lost touch. But by the time I left, she was already in an emotional relationship, which she never thought she would be. And she was already kind of working into going back to school. I mean, her life was already much more in the place that she never thought she could make it. And so that was, I think it was a good place. I knew if she needed help, she will continue to find help to continue moving in that direction. But I mean, the fact that she was so suicidal when I met her was the most impactful thing. Seeing such a young person in that kind of despair. And that's probably was my first experience of the impact of trauma in childhood, that I decided I gotta get good at this to help people overcome it, because what happened to us in childhood should not be carried the rest of our lives, and be the chain that keep us from living life. And that's what trauma does. It's a chain that can keep us stuck, and releasing it is fantastic.
Well, I remember that one of my guests that I interviewed was the director of the WakeMed, Brian Klossner, that works also with Hostel US. And he told me that it really impacted me that 78% of that, because he also supports homeless.
Mm-hmm.
He told me that 78% of the homeless have had childhood abuse.
Yep.
78%. So it's a strong correlation.
Oh,
what
yeah.
happened in your childhood and what happened in your future life.
Same with addictions. Pretty much all addictions are coming, which is very connected with homelessness. Is connected with childhood trauma. And the childhood trauma is not just being abused physically or sexually; it's abandonment. It is witnessing domestic violence. I mean, it's things, even if it was not directed to them, but it's directed to someone they love, or they just simply are abandoned. A child without a support system is as painful as being beat up, because they depend on others. Correct. So yeah, it is tremendously impactful in people. So I think that was but I think it's because I learned and I discovered that I wanted to be good at this with her.
And what is the next move of Deissy?
I'm actually right now working. I have a heavy heart for my immigrants, so I'm working in doing immigration evaluations to help people that are trying to, get their cases heard. So the immigration evaluations help present the case more from the human perspective to the judge or whatever immigration officials, and just present the picture of what happened, why is this person is here, what happened if they get sent back, or who is going to impact So I'm working on doing immigration evaluations. That's the next thing I want to become very good at. I want to do some research, and probably I'm going to use a lot of the people that I work with into what are better practices for reunification for families that come from the hostage experience. So then hopefully at some point we can create a much clear path or a much clear support for families during while their loved one is away, but also when they came back, especially because of what you say, it's such a hard process. And there is not enough, I think, resources right now or a path put in place that we can help families to understand a little bit what they're going through. So my hope is at some point to get to do some research and put something together more to support families in that way. And
Well,
I mean, there's a lot of work to do there, but hopefully we can get, with the help of everybody who has come back, get a better picture of what we can do to improve the support.
well, we're coming to the end, Deissy. We already have 1 hour talking. You have 1 minute to final conclude the show.
The one thing I want to say is whoever watches these, there is a therapist that speaks Spanish, please contact me. If you're passionate about this, if you're passionate about support, Hostage US is looking for people who work with trauma, who are passionate about this, to be volunteers. Unfortunately, a lot of our population is being, affected by this, especially in Venezuela. And so if you're passionate about this, if you want to know, if you want to help, contact me. They can find me through the LinkedIn, which you are a friend of mine in the LinkedIn. So if they find you, they find me. Send me a message, no matter where you are in the States or even outside. We have family members that are outside of the United States that are also impacted by this. So that is my goal, to create a bigger group of support for Spanish speaking people that from therapists that work trauma. Or if you want to be training trauma, I have trainings as well that I'm gonna be doing for trauma work. But we need people to get into this, to want to support others, to want to learn. That will be the goal, or that's one of my goals, that hopefully not too long term.
Well, Deissy, that was a beautiful conversation. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the audience. Next week, we're going to have another incredible guest. But as I said, I'm going to leave the contact of Deissy. If you want to contact her, there's going to be the links of her on the social media and any contact that she will want to leave there. And Deissy, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me here, Jose. I love it.
In the face of adversity, true leaders rise. This is the power of resilient leadership. But when crisis strikes, how do they respond? They adapt, they innovate, they persevere. That's the essence of resilient leadership, turning setbacks into comebacks.